Premier Doug Ford addressed the media this morning and said he is ready to work with anyone to confront the U.S. tariff.
Doug Ford's toughest talk yet about President Donald Trump and his threatened tariffs from the U.S.
Happening now, a major escalation in President Trump's trade war with Mexico and Canada.
Well, that's okay if he does that, that's fine, but the United States is subsidizing Canada.
In March 2025, President Trump launched what would become the most aggressive trade war in modern North American history. His administration announced sweeping tariffs targeting a wide array of Canadian exports: steel, aluminum, lumber, agriculture, and even energy. For many in Washington, this was supposed to be the final blow. Canada, so long dependent on the US as its dominant trading partner, was expected to fold, capitulate, bend the knee to America's economic might. But that didn't happen. Instead, Canada did something unprecedented. While US headlines blared about tariff hikes and retaliation, Ottawa was quietly building a global economic strategy that would reshape the balance of power. It wasn't just a defensive posture. It was an offensive economic playbook, one that not only withstood the tariffs, but turned them into an opportunity. And that opportunity launched Canada into a new league of economic independence and global influence. Real quick, if you're into videos that cut through the noise and break things down clearly, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps more people find this, and if you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time. We've got more deep dives coming your way. Also, drop a comment and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your take. Now onto the video. In the span of just 18 months, Canada's GDP surged to 2.6% growth. Foreign direct investment crossed $50 billion. Supply chains were reoriented, markets diversified, and perhaps most shockingly, global corporations, once deeply embedded in the American economy, started moving north. They weren't reacting to politics, they were reacting to predictability. What unfolded wasn't just about economics, it was about strategy, it was about survival, and it was about a quiet, calculated power shift that few saw coming, but one that now threatens to permanently rewrite the rules of North American trade and global investment. So, what exactly did Canada do? How did they pull it off? And what does it mean for the future of US dominance? Let's break it down. In early 2025, the United States launched a trade war that would reshape the entire North American economy, and it started with a single decision. President Trump's administration announced a sweeping set of tariffs on Canadian exports, initially framed as a protective measure to support American industries. At first, few expected the move to escalate beyond political posturing. But what began as a 25% tariff on aluminum and steel quickly ballooned into a 50% charge that reached far beyond metals. What made this trade war unprecedented wasn't just the scale, but the scope. Trump's tariffs targeted nearly every pillar of the Canadian economy: lumber, energy, agriculture, manufactured goods, even pharmaceutical components. For decades, the US and Canada had maintained one of the most integrated trade relationships in the world. Cross-border supply chains weren't just common, they were essential. Car parts, packaging materials, and raw commodities flowed back and forth across the border multiple times during production cycles. Now, each crossing carried a price tag, and those prices added up quickly. The auto industry became one of the first casualties. In Ontario and Michigan, regions built around binational manufacturing, factories that once thrived on seamless cross-border collaboration began to struggle under the weight of repeated tariffs. A single car component that crossed the border 5 times during its production journey was now being taxed 5 separate times. Suddenly, vehicles that were affordable just weeks earlier were no longer competitive. Assembly lines slowed, supplier contracts were cancelled, consumer prices jumped. But the ripple effects weren't limited to auto plants. Across the northeast US, heating bills began to rise. That's because a significant portion of the region's natural gas and oil came from Canada, now subject to a 10% tariff. American families were effectively being taxed for keeping their homes warm. And the irony was hard to ignore. The very resources Americans depended on were becoming more expensive because of policies enacted in the name of economic protection. Meanwhile, Canadian agricultural exports faced their own crisis. Dairy, grain, meat, and produce, all staples of American grocery shelves, were hit with tariff after tariff. Prices for essentials like milk, eggs, and vegetables began to climb. CNN analysts warned that everyday consumers were bearing the brunt of the trade war, not foreign governments. What was marketed as a patriotic policy was in fact squeezing working-class households, forcing them to spend more for less. For Canadian exporters, the message was clear. the United States was no longer a reliable partner. Businesses that had spent decades building relationships with American clients suddenly saw those connections dissolve. Companies like label pack printing in Toronto, which had flourished by serving US manufacturers, now faced extinction. One executive said bluntly, "If Trump throws a 50% tariff on our goods, it will wipe us out overnight." And so began the Canadian exodus, not of people, but of partnerships. From pharmaceutical firms in British Columbia to steel suppliers in Quebec, businesses began pivoting east and west, to Asia, to Europe, to anywhere that would offer stability and opportunity. The emotional toll was heavy. Generations of Canadian companies had seen America not as a foreign market, but as family. That illusion was shattered. Trump's trade war didn't just impact numbers on a spreadsheet. It altered the psychology of a continent. The assumption that America was a stable anchor in global commerce, dependable, cooperative, mutually beneficial, was no longer valid. Protectionism had become punishment. But what Washington underestimated was that Canada had options. It had quietly been laying the groundwork for something much bigger than retaliation. It wasn't just planning to survive, it was planning to thrive, and that's where Canada's Indo-Pacific masterstroke would turn the tables. While Washington escalated its trade war with brute economic force, Ottawa was quietly executing a far more sophisticated strategy. At the heart of it was a $2.3 billion Indo-Pacific initiative, a bold, forward-looking blueprint aimed at reorienting Canada's entire economic structure away from US dependency and toward global integration. The Indo-Pacific strategy wasn't a last-minute scramble, it was years in the making. And when Trump's tariffs hit with full force in early 2025, Canada was ready to move. The foundation of the plan was diversification, not just to new markets, but to entire continents. The Canadian government identified 40 Indo-Pacific countries with a combined population exceeding 4 billion people, many of which were rapidly growing economies with rising middle classes, untapped consumer demand, and hungry industrial bases. By deepening trade ties with these nations, Canada positioned itself to replace American markets, not just defend against their loss. Indonesia became the crown jewel of this strategy. With a population of 280 million and a G20 economy, it was a natural partner. A landmark comprehensive economic partnership was signed, eliminating over 90% of tariffs on Indonesian goods entering Canada. But the deal didn't just benefit Indonesian exports, it also opened wide doors for Canadian businesses, particularly in sectors like critical minerals, agri-tech, and clean energy. Investments began flowing into Indonesian nickel and bauxite operations, two essential components for EV battery production. Canada wasn't just chasing profit, it was securing the future of its manufacturing base. With demand for electric vehicles and energy storage technologies skyrocketing worldwide, securing upstream supply was a geopolitical power move. What made the Indo-Pacific strategy even more potent was its proactive nature. While American officials were focused on retaliatory measures, Canada was already facilitating business matchmaking sessions, trade delegations, and infrastructure deals across Asia and the Pacific. Government officials didn't just sign deals, they helped companies execute them. Export Development Canada and Global Affairs Canada actively worked with private sector players to map new supply chains, finance overseas expansions, and overcome regulatory barriers in new markets. Behind the scenes, this government-industry collaboration proved to be Canada's secret weapon. Ottawa wasn't just reacting, it was anticipating. Strategic intelligence teams identified not just target countries, but target sectors and even target companies. These were matched with Canadian producers who could pivot quickly, from packaging to biotech to aerospace components. The pivot wasn't just theoretical, it was happening. And while some skeptics feared that the new markets couldn't replace American scale, early numbers told a different story. Within 9 months of launching the Indo-Pacific strategy, Canadian exports to Indonesia, Vietnam, and India increased by 38%. At the same time, Canadian imports from the US were down nearly 22%, and direct-to-US exports had fallen off a cliff. Canadian manufacturers, once laser-focused on meeting US quality and regulation standards, were now quickly learning to adapt to Southeast Asian specs. The transition was steep, but it brought unexpected benefits, including more competitive pricing, lower cost bases, and reduced exposure to political risk. This wasn't just about trade, it was about long-term national security. By expanding its economic footprint beyond North America, Canada was reducing the ability of any single partner, especially one as volatile as the US, to hold its economy hostage in the future. The message to the world was clear. While America was busy building walls, Canada was building an international highway, one that didn't just connect ports and pipelines, but trust, capital, and opportunity. And this global pivot wasn't an act of desperation, it was an act of leadership. For Canadian businesses, the US had always been more than just a trade partner. It was the default customer, the neighbour you didn't have to worry about. But that comfort vanished in an instant. With tariffs tearing through every major industry, companies across Canada were forced into crisis mode. The reality hit hard. The United States, once seen as Canada's economic anchor, had become its greatest risk. Label pack printing in Toronto had spent decades building its reputation on cross-border packaging for US manufacturers. They weren't just trading partners, they were collaborators, advisors, even friends. But as tariffs approached 50%, the math no longer worked. American clients couldn't absorb the cost, and Canadians couldn't afford to eat the loss. It would wipe us out overnight, one executive admitted. And that sentiment echoed through boardrooms from Vancouver to Halifax. Pharmaceutical firms in British Columbia faced a similar reckoning. Years spent building FDA-compliant supply chains were rendered useless in weeks. One mid-sized firm made a dramatic shift. Instead of waiting for Washington to lift the hammer again, they began negotiating with Southeast Asian buyers. It wasn't just a tactical pivot, it was emotional. They weren't just walking away from a customer. They were walking away from history. In Quebec, a steel component supplier took a different approach. They warned their American clients, prices are about to double. The warning wasn't a threat, it was a fact. The intricate, decades-old supply chains that had made North American manufacturing globally competitive were crumbling. And every Canadian cost increase translated directly into an American one. Nowhere was this more evident than in the auto sector. Canadian factories weren't just exporting products, they were deeply embedded in American assembly lines. When costs surged, Detroit's production slowed. Small-town suppliers across Michigan began missing payroll. Orders dried up, layoffs followed. Communities built on cross-border cooperation were now experiencing an economic divorce. What made this transition even more jarring was the psychological shift. Canadian companies were no longer talking about when the tariffs would be lifted. They were asking what comes next, if they never are. That change in mindset, away from dependence and towards strategic independence, would prove to be a turning point not just in commerce, but in identity. Government officials in Ottawa saw the writing on the wall. They weren't just fighting for exporters, they were fighting for national economic sovereignty. The Canadian state became an active participant in helping companies diversify. Trade attachés, financial assistance, new market intelligence reports. Ottawa was pulling every lever to make sure Canadian businesses had options. What emerged wasn't just a policy shift, it was a new doctrine. If the US can weaponize trade, then Canada must neutralize its exposure. This understanding reached across industries. From meat packers in Alberta to aerospace firms in Ontario, companies began assessing how much of their business relied on US buyers and how fast they could change that. The results were staggering. Within 1 year, over 40% of Canadian businesses surveyed said they had started reducing US dependency. Some were pursuing deals in the EU, others were retooling for Asian markets. A few were even relocating operations to foreign soil to protect themselves from the unpredictability of American policy. This wasn't just a short-term adjustment, it was a structural evolution, and in many cases, it was irreversible. The emotional scars of watching a trusted partner turn into an economic hazard ran deep, but out of that pain came a new resolve. If America could no longer be counted on, then Canada would have to stand on its own. And more importantly, it would need to be seen globally as a stable alternative. And as capital began flowing north and talent started following, Canada wasn't just reacting anymore, it was rising. What started as a trade dispute became a continental realignment. Canada didn't just survive Trump's tariffs, it used them as a catalyst to transform itself. While America doubled down on walls and weaponized economics, Canada built bridges to Asia, to Europe, to the future. It diversified trade, attracted capital, secured critical resources, and emerged as a beacon of stability in a volatile global economy. For decades, Canada was seen as the junior partner, the quiet neighbour. But today, it's the one leading investor confidence, drawing in global talent and writing a new rulebook for economic sovereignty. In contrast, the US, once seen as the epicenter of predictability, is struggling with the consequences of its own unpredictability. This isn't just a North American story anymore. It's a global case study. Middle power nations around the world are watching, they're taking notes. Because what Canada just did, turning vulnerability into leverage and dependence into dominance, is something that could reshape how international trade is navigated for decades to come. So the question isn't whether Canada can thrive without the US, it's whether the US is ready for a world where Canada, and others like it, don't need it anymore. What do you think? Has Canada's quiet revolution changed the global game? Once again, thanks for watching this video. If you got something out of this, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. And hey, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Agree, disagree, or something in between. I'd love to hear it.